Good afternoon. This is a special meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, Monday, June 2nd. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Adrian.
Here.
Commissioner Landrigan.
Here.
Commissioner Amirian.
Here.
Commissioner Stepanian. Commissioner Mardian.
Here. Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda of this meeting was posted on or before Tuesday, May 22nd, 2008, on the bulletin board of outside City Hall. Next item is approval of minutes. Any corrections? Any motion?
Yeah, I have a correction to be made. On the approval of minutes of February the 25th, at under abstention, it should be Amirian rather than Adrian.
Okay, I'll note that.
I abstained because I was absent the previous meeting.
Right. Okay. I'm glad you picked that up.
Okay,
You caught that.
You had them.
Your names are too similar.
Yeah.
Didn't want to have voted twice.
Any other corrections?
Yes, the planning staff should be corrected to Stephanie Reich as senior planner.
And that's corrected, so.
Motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of February 25th, no, I'm sorry,
April 28th.
April 28, 2008, as corrected.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Adrian.
Yes.
Commissioner Landrigan.
Yes.
Commissioner Amirian.
Yes.
And Chair Mardian.
Yes. Oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes. The Commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. I don't see anybody from the audience, so we'll move on to 5, old business. We have none also. Under 6, new business. Discussion regarding installation of unique street and information signage in approved historic districts. Staff.
Okay, for this issue, we raised it at the last meeting just kind of as an informational update, kind of looking at the idea of doing this. And since that time, I've kind of talked with other city departments and kind of developed an idea of what we need to do to make this actually happen, if it's going to happen. So just as a reminder, these are the types of signs that we are considering. This is an example from New York, where the street signs in historic districts are actually visually different from the street signs in other parts of the city and actually lists the name of the historic district. And in general, I think cities that do this feel it's important to kind of create a distinctive visual look for these signs so that people know as they're passing by in their cars or they're walking that they've entered an area that has some difference from other parts of the city. And we think it's good in terms of just public education about the history of Glendale. So the signs can either be like these, where it's just the standard street sign, or an informational sign that can contain historic information, can contain maps of the district. There's a lot of variation from city to city. Here are a couple of other examples. Some are more elaborate than others. And at this point, I was hoping that the Commission could just indicate some of their ideas and preferences. The process, as I see it right now, will be that we'll take your comments and we'll discuss them among staff, and then we'll also be working with the Department of Public Works and the signage team there. I've learned that there's a cost issue in terms of particularly the street signs, because there are state regulations in terms of reflectivity and the size of the signs that we need to meet. So we will ultimately be taking this to City Council, and there will be some sort of either funding request or a determination of where the funds for this will come from if City Council ends up approving it. What we'd like to do after you discuss this today is work with Public Works, come up with possibly a mock-up or 2 mock-ups so that we can bring it back to the Preservation Commission, have a look at them, get your feedback, and then move forward with the process. So if you guys have any specific thoughts about whether it's appropriate, whether you have some design ideas or examples you'd like us to look at, I'd love to hear it.
These were the only 3 samples that you had?
This is edited from the last version. These are...
This version was better.
Okay, this was a reminder. This was more of a reminder than a... So.
Okay.
Any questions? Commissioner Landiger?
I would like to state that not only are these supposed to be appropriate for automobiles to know if you're in a district, but for pedestrians, so we could have walking tours of the district. So whatever is chosen needs to be visible both from a car as well as pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, talking with the staff in Public Works about these signs, the ones that have more information on them would probably be more pedestrian focused, obviously, because you're not going to read that from the car. They have to be at least 7 feet off the ground, so we have to find a balance between sign size, font size, and all of that to make it work, but I think that would be taken into consideration, definitely.
And if I may continue,
Of course.
it would be very nice if they could be incorporated with the bus stops, where people do walk to, get on, and have a pedestrian sort of environment. So maybe at the bus stops, if we could work with the Beeline or something so that we could have, in Washington, D.C., I was recently there, the districts are noted on the bus schedules or on the Circulon or some of the elements that are there, and it makes it really interesting because if you buy one of the day tickets there, you can get off and on and go to the districts if you wish to. You have a general idea of if you're in one, and then you can look for those boundaries if you so wish. But it was really a nice feature that I would never have thought of, but you're really dealing with, pedestrian mobility and circulation community when you deal with the bus community. So it might be an interesting thing if we could have that incorporated into bus signage, too.
And that's a great idea.
Any other questions?
Just a question. We will have the boundaries of district also shown as well.
Everything's open right now, so
Yeah.
that's definitely an option. I think it's a good idea in general.
And also, besides the bus stops, I would like to see this as you are entering the district, that this is beginning to be a different area that you are entering. So.
Yeah, I think these more text-oriented signs lend themselves to be kind of gateway signs, as kind of as you're entering.
Yes.
So.
As far as the expression of it, the one in Portland looked richer. No, I mean, but we can explore more and
Yeah, I also learned, talking with the signage people, that the clamps that hold the signs on, we have very specific type right now. If we had to get a different kind of clamp, then, the cost is just going to go up from there, so. So we'll get as much information as we can and balance it out and let you guys hear about it.
right.
I think it's very appropriate to do this, especially that we were having districts, but I like to incorporate some of the map or the district area on these signage. But one thing Commissioner Landiger mentioned about the bus stop, we don't have too many streets that have bus routes. We really have none, actually, very few.
Well, as I understood it, Stephanie, you meant to put them on the sign at the bus stops that are near
Right.
the districts, whatever's closest, or?
Well, and I walk along Verdugo, which would be near Royal,
Boulevard,
and
right.
then there is a bus route that goes down near the Cottage Hill and Adams
Yeah, Cottage Grove.
Grove.
Mhm.
And so it would be nice to maybe notice where those are, and
Yeah, I don't mind if you can make it work.
we are part of Metro. I mean, the city is part of Metro, and Metro they have tons of money, quite frankly, and Mr. Nigerian probably can confirm that because he represents us on that board, but it would be very interesting to see. I know that oftentimes the MTA has funding available for enhancement of bus stops and other bus-friendly signage, so
Well,
that might be an opportunity for us.
Let me just try to add something. I think I understand what you're trying to say. I'm wondering if, you go to a bus stop and you see a lot of signage where the buses stop. Poles are usually full of nomenclatures and signage of different times buses come and go. I was thinking maybe of a way of doing both, but maybe doing a smaller sign that would indicate that if you go down next block or two, you get to this historic district, and once you get to the intersection of where the historic district begins and maybe where it ends, you do have one of these signs. Or maybe just at the start of it. You know, if you can kind of quadrant it off or border it off with the signage so that people know when they're in the district and when they're leaving the district. And
So
they
you're
get an
asking for a
idea.
full study of a wayfinding
Maybe
thing, and I think
a
that's
full
probably-
study, okay.
Yeah, we
Well,
should-
More of a
that.
directional sign, in other words.
Uh-huh.
More of a directional.
sign, so that's,
I think a very
that's a very good idea.
It's a possibility. We have other signs directing people to Casa Adobe and Brand Library
Right.
and to Kenneth Village, so that's a possibility
Okay.
also.
Mr. Chairman, I have one
Mr.
more
Emery.
question. You're coming back to us, in what form that would be? Design suggestions or what?
We'll be coming back with a report that kind of covers all of this, from the cost through the viability of doing it, as far as, you know, what other agencies advise us about, and then also design. So if you have specific design ideas right now, you know, or in the future, well, this is going to be an ongoing discussion, so we have some time to work on it.
So the design will come with the rest of the information?
Yeah, what we'll do is that we have a sign shop that works with, in Public Works, and they're good at doing mock-ups, whether we do an actual metal mock-up or paper mock-ups, I'm not sure. I'm going to be working with them to show them what some of the examples from other cities are, similar to what you've seen, and see what they can do. So, but the primary issue for them is that this has to meet the state code, and so I'm not sure in terms of how that limits our colors or anything else, but it's mainly a reflectivity issue, as far as I know.
Thank you.
One question, Mr. Chair, how about the signs that we have now, like for the library, the Casa Adobe, and all? How's that going to relate to this? Are we changing those signs?
No plan that I know of. So
Are we going to be consistent with that sign?
Well, these will have a somewhat different function. Brown is the background color for most of those signs, and brown is traditionally kind of a historic color in other cities, but not necessarily. It's something we can definitely try to coordinate if you think that's a good idea.
But those are individual signs.
Individual
Yeah.
signs, right?
This is a district sign.
District sign, right. So
Yeah, I think we have room, especially at this point, to think of being different and really
Okay.
singling these areas out, but we could also merge it into a broader sign program.
Okay.
I am satisfied.
Well, what do we need from us at this point? Just,
I have notes of everything you said.
all right?
I think that's good. So,
Everybody's in support of this.
yeah, no votes required today. Ultimately, we'll have to take a vote once we're making a recommendation to the city, so.
Okay. We'll move to item number 7, Planning Department update and informational briefings. A, discussion of revised historic district process regarding timing of a public meeting to review historic resource survey.
Okay, and again, this is following up on something we discussed a bit last month. As I was setting up a public meeting for the Royal Boulevard Historic District, which we had last week, and I'll tell you about in a second, but it was very successful, there seemed to be a concern that the Historic Preservation Commission was voting on the survey before the public had a chance to review the survey itself. And going through the ordinance, there was no requirement that the public meeting to discuss the survey had to occur at one time or another. So without having to vote on this or amend the ordinance or anything else, we were able to move the meeting ahead in the process. So what you have on this flow chart now is the revision that incorporates the public meeting before your vote. And what we expect to come from this is that if there are considerations, if there are errors that are found by anyone whose house was in the survey, we'll be able to bring that to you before you make your vote, and we'll be able to fix anything that might be wrong, or at least let you know what the public in the neighborhood thinks. In the case of Royal Boulevard, we didn't have anyone come to us with corrections, so I'm glad to report that. We had 11 homes out of the 30 homes represented at the meeting, which was a good turnout for an evening meeting like this. And it was very interesting. It was kind of a lot of questions about what happens in a historic district. We had Jen Edwards from the Building and Safety Department there to kind of explain, how you get a permit in Glendale. And then we kind of made sure that people understood that because you're in a historic district, that process isn't going to change. There's not another layer of review. There's not another level of bureaucracy. It's just a shift in the way that we're looking at these buildings. So I would say, in general, there were kind of good vibes. It was a good meeting. So. So we think that this change will take care of any problems with the future district. So this is active as of
This is
today.
true,
Yeah.
as of today.
This will be our new process.
Okay.
But I think it's a good idea, Jay, I mean, because it helps the public know ahead of time what their property designations are. Mr. Amir, you had a question?
Do you know when the Royal Boulevard is coming back? Or is it coming back to us? Yes.
Yes, it comes back to you. As of your meeting on the 28th, when you approved the survey, the applicants have 6 months to circulate their petition. And that's the petition where they have to get 50% plus of the homes to ask the city to change the zone. So 6 months falls on October 27th. So we'll, as soon as we get the petition back and we verify the signatures, we'll put it on the next agenda for whatever month that is.
Okay. Anything, any questions?
Just a question on this. In reviewing it, one of the things that I saw that just seemed to me like a lost opportunity is that the consultant did not note buildings that would be eligible for historic designation, and which would seem to me that we already have the consultant out there doing this work, and now if, as much as these are contributors, it doesn't really say these are eligible for the Glendale requirements, which, I mean, it would have taken, I think, a small amount of time further. And I don't know if that's something we want to address, but it seems to me like a very big lost opportunity in the writing of the contract, or in our intention of that contract.
And
I know it's not on the agenda, I just care to bring that
It's
up.
close enough, so.
Can I
But these will have to come individually.
Well, typically, they don't have to. I mean, I have seen other studies, I mean, in the Cumberland study, I think that they did indicate.
I can address that. That's definitely something we've talked about with the consultants. And in order to get a survey that not only identifies contributors, but also identifies properties eligible for the Glendale Register, the California Register, or the National Register, it requires a considerable more amount of work for each property, because then you have to go into ownership history for each property, you have to do research about those owners. We're looking at less of an architectural kind of survey and more of an in-depth survey for each property, and so the cost would rise pretty dramatically accordingly. We could, with your advice, when we're going out to bid, we could ask for 2 bids, one for district-level nomination or survey, and one that actually went the extra
An
step.
addendum, yeah.
But for something like Ardeven Highlands, where we have 87 properties, that would be a considerable difference in the cost of the survey. So what we got with Royal Boulevard is pretty much the standard kind of survey that the consulting firms do for not just Glendale, but for any city. When we got those determinations for Cumberland Heights, my understanding is that it was not done with the full level of research that, a full survey would get.
I'd like to, Mr. Chair, may I?
Sure.
Kind of think out loud. How would that affect, positive or negative, pro or con of those areas? Let's say somebody is against districting, and his house specifically is called as potential for being a resource. How would that work?
Well, it shouldn't change anything, because if we did the survey type that we're doing now, where we determine contributors and non-contributors, if you're a contributor under the state environmental laws, there would be, we would be reviewing the possibility of a demolition of a house as an environmental impact. So if something was on the Glendale Register, it would have the same level of review under CEQA. So I'm not sure that it would change anything. The main con, I guess, would be that it would just cost more to do the survey, and some people might be concerned about that.
But follow up on his question. But for example, Royal, like you mentioned, there's at least 4 or 5 that don't need to have too much research done. to make it designated.
Well, we have two already designated.
Yeah, and I know a few of them may be thinking of designating, but don't you have to have their consent? I mean, when they apply? You have to have a consent.
To put a property on the Glendale register, you need the owner's consent, but to find that a property is eligible for the register, which I think Commissioner Landrigan was considering, you don't have to.
Okay.
All right, any more questions?
I just have a question about this flow chart. Maybe I haven't really reviewed it completely. What if there is opposition? Is there any time frame designated for people who aren't interested in proceeding with the being put on the register? I mean, here we have a required 50% of the owners must sign to move this thing along. Should there be a block in here for people who are opposed to it?
Yeah, the city code has a whole process for opposition to any zone change, and it's a petitioning process where the owners of over 25%, or I'm sorry, owners of over 20% of the street frontage in the proposed district, if they sign a petition opposing the zone change, the requirement once we get to city council goes from having a 4/5 majority to a unanimous majority. So that's 5 out of 5, right? So that is built in for any kind of zone change. We could put that on here, but there's no...
You should put it on here.
There's no time... It's not time sensitive the way everything else is. It's not built into a flow chart type step.
Yeah.
So we could add an aside. I'll try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
Go all the way to city council, and then you get a group of people that oppose it. Maybe all that could be avoided if we moved it in.
Well, no, the opposition to the district doesn't change anything here as long as people support the district and all of these things go forward. The opposition to the district never cuts short any aspect of the process. All it does is ultimately require the unanimous vote. So. I'll definitely look at the flow chart and see how we
As long
might...
as you get the 50% to start
Go ahead,
with.
Mr. Reed.
No, hold on. This flow chart is for a different purpose. How do we go about designating a district as historic district? And the code specifically says that the opposition has a voice and they can raise that voice accordingly. I don't see any need for that to go here. If it goes here, it has to fit somewhere, and it's again a time issue. I don't think there is a place for that here.
The one place I see for it, and it would almost be parenthetical, is where we discuss at the very end, where we talk about approval, and we can say what the majorities are required there. We could have something 4 out of 5 majority, 5 out of 5 if opposition petition submitted, and that would put the presence of an opposition petition on this. But I think your point is well taken. This is really designed to talk about the process for the people who are trying to get a historic district designated.
Otherwise, if we put every angle of it, then we are putting the entire municipal code over here.
Well, let me ask you a question. Excuse me.
Let him finish, Mr. Reed.
We should kind of simplify that, and there is room for opposition, and let them do what the rules said. So I would not be in favor of putting it here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Adrian.
Well, let me ask you a question. See if I understand. 50%, you need 50% of the homeowners in the proposed district to approve the districting.
Yeah, more accurately, 50+%
percent
of the homes with the signatures of those homeowners backing up.
And what is the amount or the percentage for those if you had someone who was in a group that were in opposition of this?
If you oppose it, you have to have 20% of the street frontages measured in feet within the district. 20%.
Plus 20%.
Yeah. Oh, 20% plus, I guess.
20% of the homeowners could be...
20% of the street frontage of those in opposition. So if you own a house and you oppose the district and your house has a 50-foot frontage into the district, you have 50 feet. And you add up everyone who opposes it, and if that frontage added up is over 20% of the total frontage in the proposed district.
Let me jump to my conclusion.
Okay.
Is it possible to have 50% of the people approve it and then get 20% of what you mentioned? Is that formula?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
It is possible.
Yeah, and that
And
that
if
would
that
require the
happens,
unanimous vote.
Then you need a unanimous vote of the city
Exactly.
council. Well, anyway,
But let me,
technicality, I guess, but
If I may,
somewhere in there, we have to know when it gets to city council, I suppose, and like you mentioned earlier there, Jay, that we will know that before it hits city council.
Of course, we don't
It is
keep this a
written in
secret,
the
we don't
book.
keep this a secret, and...
It's already written.
it's integrated design guidelines.
So my suggestion is sort of redundant then. Yes, to bring it out.
It's, you know, this flow chart was specifically designed for people who are proponents who are moving through the process to understand the process. Based on the commission's discussion, we could add something here, we could leave it the way it is. We're always very open about how it works, though. We're not trying to...
Okay, let me
say
just
that-
say one thing, and I'll just sort of conclude my thing. If you were to add something down here that says if you had opposition of 20% of the frontages, homeowners' frontages were opposing 20%, therefore you would need a majority vote,
A unanimous
a
vote.
unanimous vote.
Right.
Excuse me. Maybe just a comment like that down here under city council approval.
But isn't that written in the design, it's in the code, isn't that?
It's in the
written?
code, it's also in the Historic District Handbook that people receive. It's in materials that the city gives to the public.
just if I may jump in, just as a
Sorry, Mr.
point of
Yes.
clarification, the outline that you're seeing and the kind of the percentages required and the timeframes for that in terms of the 6 months for 50% majority, that's all built into the Historic District Ordinance. The petition for people who would like to oppose a zone change, which could be historic district or could be any zone change, is built into the municipal charter. And that's why there's a little bit of that's why it's phrased in a different way in terms of the frontage as opposed to property owners.
Right.
So it's built into the charter for any zone change, not into the historic district
Go
ordinance.
ahead, Commissioner Lonergan.
Well, I think that adding something that is not really part of the process to proceed is somewhat confusing to the process. It's trying to provide too much information, I think. I believe that we have procedures for CEQA. We have procedures that tell you the timelines. They don't go into the deep. They just show you what the process is, and they give you timelines. This has the process here. The information that would be necessary in either one of those things is incidental to this process, I think. That's why I'm thinking it would be confusing to add something that's really incidental to the process. It's not part of this process. It can happen at any time during the process. So any time it happens, by the time it gets down here, it would happen. So I seem that even if you add it at the end, it assumes like this is your last chance, when you could have an opposition from the very beginning, which then would trigger it as it continues to go forward.
Okay. Well, let's move on. I think we should just, whatever this is right now, and we'll leave it the way it is.
Okay.
Unless if we have other issues in the future that require the need to bring those words in here, we'll do it. Because we haven't even had one district yet. So we'll move on. And we'll leave it the way it is for the time being, in my
Very good.
opinion.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, I don't know.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all on that item? That's
Yeah.
it? Okay. Next item is 7B, project updates, Rockhaven, Algemac, and Fidelity Federal DPSS building.
And this is based on the Commissioner's request at the last meeting to get some updates about some ongoing projects that the city's involved in. I think everyone knows something about what's happening at Rockhaven. In case you don't, Rockhaven was a sanitarium that was built and developed in 1923 up in the Montrose area. It's on Honolulu Avenue. And it's unique in some ways. It's, as far as we know, it's the only sanitarium developed just for women who are suffering from mental issues. So it was a mental asylum rather than a tuberculosis asylum. The Crescenta Valley and that whole area in the foothills was just rife with all sorts of sanitaria during the teens, 10s, 20s, 30s. A lot of those were tuberculosis-based or oriented. This one, as far as we know, is unique. So as I'm sure everyone's heard, the city has purchased the property, and we're now going through a public process to determine how it's going to be used, who is going to use it, and what might happen there. We just had our first meeting as the city on Saturday, which was well attended, got a lot of information out. There's a lot of interest in the community. There's actually another meeting about Rockhaven tonight at 7 o'clock at the Crescenta Valley Church of Religious Science, and that's being held by the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley. So Bob McFall, the assistant city manager, will be there showing some pictures he's taken. I'll be there giving a little historic overview, and they're expecting a lot of people from the area. So I just wanted to throw some pictures together from...
What's that address?
It's at the corner of Dunsmore and Santa Carlotta. That's the best I have. Hopefully that'll work.
You won't get lost. Just follow the crowd.
Is it locked? One cannot walk inside and look at it?
Yeah, only city personnel can get in at this point. There's the expectation that there will be guided public tours at some point in the future, but there are a lot of safety issues in terms of overgrown brush and uneven paving surfaces. So every city agency seems to be involved with this at some level, and work is going to start, I believe, next week or maybe even this coming week to start clearing away some of the brush and cleaning it up a bit. So,
That's good. Are there any thoughts on what they're going to do with the property?
there are many thoughts, and we're still in...
Share a few with us?
Well, one thought is that the Montrose Branch Library could move to the site. I have some more pictures to show you so you get a better sense of the site. There are several large open areas where a new construction could occur without affecting the historic buildings and the historic landscapes on site. So there's thought that a branch library could move there. The Historical Society has expressed interest in having either museum or offices there. The park rangers will be moving, some of them will be moving onto site for an office there in the near future, which will help just bring present people there and some security to the site. And then part of the public process is going to be going to the community and saying, what do you guys want? What can we do with the site? What do we need up here in Crescenta Valley and in Montrose? And how does the site lend itself to it? So once you get on the site, and as the commission, we might be able to arrange a special tour for you if you'd like that.
Suggest that,
Yeah, so I could definitely look into that, and we should be able to do it. It really does, it's full of possibility. It's a really cool site, and it's really fun to start thinking about. So let me run through a few pictures, and I'll answer your questions as we go along. This is Agnes Richards, who founded it, and the interesting thing is she actually purchased existing buildings when she started it. So the house on the right became the administration building. It had a rock base, and people suggest that may be why it's called Rockhaven. Her concept was to create kind of a different, very non-institutional, non-insane asylum kind of atmosphere. So there was a definite effort to make it a home-like, kind of low-scale, residential scale setting that would be more comforting for the patients. And I think it's very successful on that level. You can see the site plan here. A number of buildings. The earliest one dates to 1920. The most recent one, which is, if you can see the mouse, is this building here, is on the site of the Rockhaven building that we just saw, which was damaged in the 71 earthquake. So this building is 72. But we have a 1920 structure. We have two other buildings from the 20s. All three of those are in the Craftsman style. And then the rest of the buildings are all in the Spanish colonial style, and most of those are from the late 20s into the 30s. And here's an example of 3 or 4 of the buildings in their current condition. So you get a sense that even though it hasn't been open and tended for a while, that still hasn't completely been overgrown and lost. The buildings tend to be in good condition, but each of them has different issues that the facilities department has identified in terms of wiring, gas piping, there's mold in some of them. So there will be a number of issues to abate and deal with regardless of what the use is. Here's one of the earlier Craftsman bungalows up at the top, and then this really cool little kind of faux wood concrete table and benches which is very close to the house at the top, and it's just this really idyllic little setting. This, we've learned recently, was built in the 60s, so this isn't one of the oldest things, but it's certainly one of the most artistically interesting. And then once we've gone inside all of the buildings, there's a lot of furniture left over, most of it dating from more recent years. We haven't found a lot of really early furniture, but we have found a lot of keepsakes and memorabilia from the various residents who were there. And all of these things have been inventoried by library staff, and I've inventoried some of them. So everything that is movable and of potential value is being moved so that we can protect it, and while work goes on, nothing's going to be damaged. But at this point, we're saving everything that we think is potential because we don't know who's going to find it valuable in the future. So we're being pretty open in our taste. And then the Historical Society up in the Crescenta Valley has done a lot of oral history work and found a slew of wonderful photographs. So we actually have some really good documentation of what the site looked like. So here are some of the interiors. The rooms were typically 2 patients were in a room. There were a few ward rooms. And then there were also common rooms, common living rooms, and then a dining hall for everyone that you see at the bottom. And here's some historic photos showing some of the buildings that are still on site, looking more or less the way they do in these photos. But of course, the landscaping and some of the just general character hasn't been as well tended recently. Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
So I'll definitely check with the people who can help arrange for a commission tour and see how we can arrange that, and then let you guys know. So.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
I applaud the council for buying this property.
I double that. You're
I
right.
think that was an excellent approach. Next is
Algemax. If you've driven down San Fernando Road lately, you may have noticed something's missing from your landscape. Algemax Coffee Shop, which you see in a kind of a blurry but cool-looking historic photograph. A night shot used to be in this area where you see a construction fence now. This is a project that's moving forward under the redevelopment agency for a low-income housing project on the site. And there was a lot of community concern that Algemax was a valuable structure, and there was concern that it might be lost. So working with the developer and various advocacy groups, including Glendale Historical Society, the city came up with a solution that's going to preserve what would basically be the first 20 feet or so of the facades of Algemax. So if you look at this canopy up at the top left, which is probably the most distinctive feature of the building, you see it's about 15 or 18 feet deep. So that's kind of the depth that's going to be retained on the new structure. Unfortunately, because of the layout of the streets and the need to get a driveway to the new building, Algemax was right where that driveway needed to go so that it could line up with Glendale Avenue. So the building is going to be shifted to the kind of southeast portion of the site. And here's some pictures of the recent demolition work. And I shouldn't say demolition, this is the salvage part of the work. The rear portion of the building was demolished, and then the front section that we're saving has been salvaged. So here you see the diamond canopy being lowered down onto the back of a truck, and then it was carted over to the side of the site, and you can see it up against the brick wall there, and that's the back wall of Seeley's, if you know San Fernando Road. So there's 2 storage containers that contain all of the steel or all of the window frames, all of the fascia, the canopy that went around part of the building, the brick facing that was under the display windows has been salvaged and is stacked up there, and some of the interior features are also inside the storage containers. So basically everything is ready to go once the new building is coming up, that this is going to be kind of recreated on the front of the building. So it's not exactly what we call, historic preservation at its highest level, but we think given the kind of constraints of the site and the meaning of Algemax, it's a solution that I think people are going to be happy with. So,
Jay, what function will this have?
The section of the new project is going to be the community room for the tenants in the building. So it's going to be an open space that's open to the street, so all of the coffee shop windows will now be windows looking into the community site. The canopy is still going to be exposed, so it'll be kind of an outdoor area that's usable. And then there were two neon signs that said coffee shop, dining room, that were kind of boomerang shaped or bow tie shaped, I guess. Both of those have been saved. They're inside the storage containers. And at least one of those will be relocated inside the kind of community space. Hopefully both of them will.
Well, that's good. At least they're bringing it back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, when it's back. But we at least know, I should let you know that Architectural Resources Group was hired by the developer to kind of monitor the project. So they've done all the documentation before the demolition and salvage work was done. They've done site and construction monitoring, and then they'll be involved once the pieces are coming back, so.
A few years ago, this would have been gone.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of architecture that...
You think in Glendale.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah, this is something we don't have a lot of, and I think there's a lot of passion for this sort of work and a little more education that needs to be done, so.
Yeah, the
this will help.
Googie architecture.
They are growing. They are growing.
We're getting there.
I mean, growing by saying, growing as,
Maturing.
yes, we are maturing.
Okay,
Well, we're over 100 years old, so
that's right.
it's about time.
Next, please.
Fidelity Federal, another project you may have driven by and seen that something is happening there that you may not have expected. This is also a redevelopment
Definitely not.
project, agency project. This is on Broadway at the corner of Louise. And this was designed, as you probably know, by W.A. Sarmiento, who designed the Glendale Federal Building. This actually predates Glendale Federal, so this is 56 and that is 59. And this was the home of Fidelity Federal and ultimately became a Department of Social Services office. So the interior has been pretty much, there's not a lot left on the interior, but we do have pretty much an intact Sarmiento design on the exterior. The proposal is for the Hollywood Production Center, which actually is now using Glendale Federal to move into this building also. So it's going to be various production suites that are available for rent to filmmakers and media people. So the issue here was, is this a historic building? The city redevelopment agency hired a consultant who determined that this building was not a historic building under CEQA, but despite that, the project is moving forward with respect to the historic character of the building. So what we're going to see is something that looks very much like the original building, minus these louvers. And the important thing about the louvers is that they weren't original to the building. These weren't there in 1956 when it was completed. They were added in 1959. So the loss of the louvers, we can't say, is going to destroy an important historic aspect of the building, although a lot of people really like them and got used to them, and especially after Glendale Federal kind of had an interest in this kind of environmental control on buildings. So the work you can see is over on the west side of the building. There are some new window openings going into the brick facades of what's actually a 1961 addition. So the two bays where the windows are, and then this. Actually, no, I think it's just these two bays are the 1961 edition. Sarmiento deliberately left these two bays with the blank brick facades, and there's a stair tower and kind of back of house stuff behind those. And then the louvers were taken off, new windows are being put in, the existing stainless steel column covers are being retained, and we think that, and then also on the alley side, this is Rafi's over on the left side.
The whole opening is new.
Yeah, this whole thing is new, these openings, and then on this side, this is the Louise facade, and you can see that the existing window frames were taken out, but the opening sizes are staying the same, the column covers are staying the same, and then the spandrel panels will be returned, but they will be, as I understand it, new spandrel panels, but the color will come close to, if not match, the historic color of the spandrels, which was kind of this turquoise color. And then going back, obviously this the sign blade that rises above the building will be reused for signage for the new business in there.
One question, who the agency reviews all these changes? I mean, all this proposal was approved by the agency,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, because the building was determined not to be historic, we haven't been involved too much. And obviously, it wasn't on the Glendale Register, so the Preservation Commission.
Despite the fact that the architect is rather significant?
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about that decision, and there was some people who felt that this building should have been treated as a historic building, but ultimately the city hired a consultant whose report found that it wasn't, so they went forward with that. But I think what we're going to see, despite that, is a pretty good project and a pretty good example of reusing a historic building. And this, again, like Algermax, this is kind of a vintage buildings from this era. A lot of people don't understand that these are important historic artifacts that we need to really think about carefully, whether we're not going to preserve them all, but this is the kind of thing, some people don't see the beauty or the historic importance of buildings like this. So I think through the example of Glendale Federal and this building, if the project comes out as we expect it to, we'll have some good examples of how to move forward.
Well, I'm glad to see the building come to life. One thing, I mean...
Yeah, that was another
The building
issue.
has been vacant for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think they found a user who's very suitable for the building. They're not requiring, so many changes that we're losing the structure.
One thing, does the Historical Society has knowledge of all this?
Yeah, they've been very involved in the process. The LA Conservancy was involved in the process.
Well, is that lovely terrazzo floor being maintained that was in the lobby?
Terrazzo floor, I
With that large...
can't address that.
little opening.
The large
Foyer.
opening, yeah, the opening is being kept, so the mezzanine and the double height lobby space or banking room space are being kept. I'm not sure about the terrazzo floor, but I do know the stainless steel railings around the perimeter of the mezzanine are
The
supposedly
trouser
staying.
floor is nice, too.
It
I
was
remember.
gorgeous.
What did you say the name of the building was originally?
Fidelity Federal Savings and Loan.
Savings.
Yeah.
And
Before that, it was the public...
then it
As
became
After it was social services.
social
yeah.
services after
It was
that.
built for the bank and then became,
Yeah.
Okay,
all right,
Thank
so there are your
Wow.
updates.
thank you.
Good for you.
We'll move on to item 8, comments from commissioners.
My comment is that I don't have any comment.
Well, good.
Neither do I.
Mr. Adrian.
I concur.
I have one comment. And since our new commissioner is not here, I would appreciate if you put it on the agenda under,
Oh, that's a good comment.
as a new commission, introduction to a new commissioner
For next time.
for next time.
Yes, of
whenever
course,
she comes.
okay.
And will we be officially giving Ms. Rusian a small plaque from us that we have signed, as we typically have done before?
Yes.
Yes.
You should do that.
We will do that.
For her service, that would
Yeah,
be...
we
That'll be
haven't
very nice.
done it yet, but we will do it.
Oh, there's one other thing, Jay.
Mhm.
The Sealy Building, is there any updates coming up on the Sealy Building, as you've done so far with these other two?
So far, nothing has changed there that we would need to update you. Permits have been issued for interior demolition to take out the non-historic partitions inside the building. So work is moving forward on that. There's still some other issues that they have other hurdles to go through for the permitting process with the
But you'll keep
redevelopment
us
agency.
informed as that goes on.
Sure.
Thank you, Jay.
I do have one more.
Go ahead, Commissioner Adrian.
I really loved the fact that we had the presentation on the Craftsman report, and I did call Jay this week to see why it wasn't on our website. He said it is on another website, the state website, correct? Is there any way we can just put a link until we are able to update it on
Sure.
our website, or even on, so that people know where it is? Because it's just really great.
Yeah, the version we're going to have on our website, ultimately, thanks to Manny Valenzuela, is going to have all of the information about, including information about what's called a 6Z on the status codes, which are homes that have been determined not to be eligible at all for as potential Glendale Register properties. So the state doesn't even have those up there right now. So, but yeah, we can definitely add a link easily.
That'd be great.
Okay, we'll take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the...
Thanks, everyone.
today.